TOEFL, the test of English as a foreign language. If you are preparing for the TOEFL, this video will make sure you have everything you need within 1 hour. That's my target for this video, and I'm gonna begin right away. Guys, remember, if you have more time, a 2-week TOEFL prep plan video is already available on this channel. You can go ahead and you can check a day-by-day plan where you can study for 2 weeks. But for people who have lesser time, or for people who would like to see me live solve TOEFL, I'm going to be doing this video. Within 1 hour, I'm going to be packing this video up with as much TOEFL content as possible. So pay attention, it's going to take a lot of concentration from your end. And when I solve the test, I want you to solve it with me. That way, you will know what the TOEFL is all about. First, take a look at this image. It will explain the latest TOEFL's breakdown on how the reading, listening, speaking, and writing sections are structured. But if this is not enough, don't worry. I'm going to be going deeper into each of these sections. First, let's begin with the reading section. The TOEFL will always have the reading section first, and the reading, as of now, will consist of 2 passages with 10 questions each. Now, to solve these 20 questions in total for these 2 passages, you have a collective amount of time which is 35 minutes. I have a couple of tips and tricks for you over here. The first is distribute your time carefully. Understand this, you can spend 35 minutes on the first passage itself if you want. You would never get to see even the second one. But that's not what we want to do. We want to make sure that every question is done within a specified amount of time. Try not to take more than a minute on each and every question on average. The second tip I have for you is to carry earplugs. I have attached an image over here, and these would generally be life-saving devices for you, because what happens is other people might be doing their listening section sometimes, right? Maybe you started a bit late, and at that point in time, through their speakers, even though there are speakers attached on their ears, if you're at the test center, you will listen to their audio clips, and that's a distraction. So carry these earplugs. Instead of doing this, you will be able to just put those earplugs in. Of course, if you're taking the test at home, that's a different story altogether. My third tip for you is to not reread or memorize the passage. Remember, you don't need to focus on the names again and again. You don't need to focus on every single detail of the passage. What you do need to focus on is what the passage is trying to tell you and what the answer to the question is that is in front of you. You do not need to understand the whole passage by heart. No one's going to ask you about this passage after 10 minutes. My fourth tip for you is that the questions are in order of the passage. So the first question may be from paragraph 1. After that, the second question will be either from paragraph 1 or 2, right? If it was from paragraph 2, then the third will be from paragraph 3. Similarly, it will keep on moving forward. The questions will move in the same order as the passage. Now, this right here is a very important piece of information. Of course, exceptions exist, such as the summary questions, which will ask you about the whole passage altogether. But in general, it's very important that you understand that when there's a regular flow going, that means you want to read the question, you want to read the passage. As soon as you get the answer to the question, you mark it and then you move forward with the passage right from where you left off. My fifth tip for you for the reading section is to not get stuck. It's very easy to get stuck and keep on reading the same line over and over again just because it's a bit complicated. But remember, the passage is going to be always in front of you, all right? If you don't get exactly what some line is trying to tell you, sometimes it's better to move on and you can come back to it later on if the question is indeed from that line itself. Point number 6 is to focus on your vocabulary. Please remember, if your vocabulary is strong, you will understand the meaning of the questions, the passage, the words, everything better, which will make it easier for you to get through the passage in a quicker time frame. By the way, these are the kinds of questions that the reading section will give you. Take a look at this one. First is vocabulary question, where they ask the meaning of a word. The second one is the factual information question, where they ask you about a fact in the passage. The third one is a negative factual information question, where essentially they are asking what happened except for this, right? So except, that means they put a negative twist to it, right? So which of these are true except, right? So that question is going to be the negative factual information one. The next one is the rhetorical purpose question, where you really have to kind of think and understand why something happened in the passage. The fifth kind is the inference question, where again you have to make an inference as to what is kind of automatically stated in the passage, but they haven't exactly mentioned it. The sixth one is the sentence insertion question, where you have to insert a sentence within the passage. The seventh kind is the matching question. For instance, people like to go to vacations on beaches and mountains. Some examples of beaches are A, B, C. And then what you have to do is you have to select the right option. So if they say beaches, then you have to select A, B, C. That's matching question. Finally, you have the summary question. This is generally worth more points than the other questions. And usually what this entails is you have to summarize the passage. The key to this is to think, okay, if this line that is given to me as an option is not selected, does the meaning of the passage change? Am I leaving something important out? If no, then great, then you leave it. Otherwise, you add it and that's a part of your summary. Let's move on to the listening section. In the listening section, you will generally see 2 conversations and 3 lectures with 5 questions per conversation and 6 questions per lecture in general. The listening section on an average will take you 36 minutes to get through. Some of my tips for this section. Again, distribute time carefully. You can just stick to one question itself and never move forward to the next question and the time will go away. So please remember, you have to mark it, you have to move forward because the timer is going to consider the overall section and not just a particular question. My tip number 2 for you is to keep your earphones volume level high so that you do not hear other people's speakers if you're at the test center. Remember that it's going to happen if your volume is not high. So you want to keep it at the highest level. My point number 3 for you is to learn to take notes concisely. Yes, listening section is all about notes. What you write in your notes matters. And if you don't write what is important, of course, you may lose out. But remember, there needs to be a balance. If you're writing too much, you will not listen to what the passage is telling you because, of course, you can't write fast enough, right? And maybe some important information will go by. So keep a balance, write things in short form and use arrows, use lines, use drawings, whatever it takes to basically make it easier for you. When I do the listening section today, I want you to focus on how I take notes. I'm going to be doing it on a notepad in front of you, so I won't be able to draw everything right here. But I want you to be able to see what kind of notes I take. My tip number 4 for the listening section is to practice to understand various accents. You can see a lot of videos on this, a lot of different kinds of movies from different regions to be able to understand different accents. The UK and the US accents would be the most important one here. So on the listening section, this is the kind of an audio clip that will be playing, and after it finishes playing, you will start seeing questions. These are the kind of questions that will be asked of you. Number 1 is the detail question, where they are discussing about a particular detail that was present in the listening passage. Number 2 is the function question, where they are discussing about why something happened within the listening section. Number 3 is the inference question, where you have to infer something from the listening that happened within the passage. You have to suggest something on the basis of your inference. Number 4 is the main idea type of question, where you have to really talk about what's the main idea of the listening. These questions are generally more popular in the lectures than conversations. Number 5 is the organization question. As you can see here, we're talking about how the professor organizes his explanation, right? So that's what this one is about. Number 6 is the attitude. What is the attitude of person A towards the other? What is the attitude of the group, etc., etc. Number 7 is the categorization question. It's very similar. You have to match things to the particular category. Let's move on to the speaking section. This comes in the form of 4 speaking section questions, and I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about these 4 questions. The first one is an independent speaking task, where you get to speak about a familiar topic. It may just be a question like, what's your favorite travel destination and why? You get 15 seconds to prepare, 45 seconds to record your response. The second question type is of a conversation. It tells you about a change that is happening on campus at a particular university, at a particular college. You get to read this passage for about 45 to 50 seconds. After that, there's a conversation about the same passage itself, wherein 2 people are going to be talking. One will be a man, another one a woman. And they're going to be discussing, and one of them is going to either support or oppose each and every reason mentioned for the change in the passage. So now you're listening. And in the end, you have to speak. You have to record yourself. You get 30 seconds to prepare, 60 seconds to give your response. And this is essentially where you summarize the whole conversation. The third question type will have an integrated speaking again, but this is in the form of a lecture. So again, same thing. You first read a passage for 45 to 50 seconds about a topic that the class is going to be about. Then there's a lecture on the same passage. You listen to it and the professor tells you a little bit more about this topic in detail. Finally, you get 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to record a response. We have to summarize everything that the professor taught you. The fourth one is again integrated speaking in the form of a lecture. You'll be given a lecture with a phenomenon which may have subtypes, and then the professor will give you examples of each of these subtypes. And finally, after listening to the lecture, you have to summarize the whole lecture in your own words, of course, where you get 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to record your response. My tips for the speaking section. Note taking again is critical. Remember, your notes should neither be too sparse nor in depth, as we discussed. I'll be showing you how to take notes in this video when I do the speaking section as well. Remember, you're marked on your speaking and not your opinion. So don't worry about your opinion. Understand that your speaking should be good. Avoid using fillers like don't do that. Instead, put a gap, which is much better. And remember, don't worry if you get cut off. A lot of times what will happen is that you're still recording, and towards the end when you're summarizing, maybe you may get cut off. I got cut off on the TOEFL, and yet I was able to get a 119 out of 120. That's okay. You don't need to worry. I had full score on the speaking section. Finally, point number 6 would be to use a wide range of vocabulary. Of course, don't use words that you don't know at all. But when you're certain about a word and it seems a bit more advanced but fits into the sentence, use it. That's going to help you gain more points. Now, let's move on to the final section of the TOEFL, that is the writing section. This has changed recently. Question number 2 is changed entirely, but question 1 is the same. You'll have a total of 2 questions. The first one is the integrated writing task. In this one, first you'll read a passage for about 3 minutes, and generally after this, you will receive a lecture where the professor is going to be opposing everything mentioned in the passage. I understand you may be thinking, hey, sometimes it supports, right? But no, he will always oppose it. At this point, your job is to listen to the professor and take notes. The passage will always be in front of you, so don't worry about it. Finally, you have to summarize the professor's opposition of the points. You will have 20 minutes to write, and I advise that you write at least 200 to 300 words. The second task is the latest one, which is the academic discussion task. This is more of an online classroom discussion that is going on, and the professor brings up a topic which may be a little bit controversial. Now, 2 students will comment their stance on this topic already. Usually, one is going to be for the motion, one against the motion. Now, you have to mention your stance. Of course, that's going to be your response, and this has to be again mentioned with reasons. The ideal answer usually consists of at least 100 to 150 words. This question is currently not available in most of the TOEFL practice sections or books at this moment. That's why we've built an article for you with 10 such questions available to you exclusively. You can go on to YMGrad.com on the articles section, and you will be able to find this article where you can scroll and see all the questions, and you can actually answer them and also see sample answers. My tips for the writing section. Write a structured answer. That means every paragraph should contain one point itself. All right. The second tip is to not use unnecessary jargon. If you don't know what a word means, or if you're not really sure what you're doing there with a particular word, just leave it out. My third tip is to use advanced punctuation. Learn to use semicolons, colons, brackets, commas. You should know the right usage of these. And only when you know the right usage, use them then, and you will see your score will increase quite a lot. When practicing, I recommend that you practice on a notepad on a computer so it does not correct your spelling mistakes. Finally, remember to leave time out for a review. Towards the end, last couple of minutes before the question ends, I want you to leave time out and review your answers. This is very important because when you read, when you were typing in a hurry, you may have made some minor mistakes. But if you get some time for review, just about a minute or 2 also, you can still read the whole passage you wrote. You can correct those mistakes. Trust me, I've written articles as a professional writer as well, and yet I've found those mistakes towards the end of the test. So you may want to take this into account. Well, that was it. Now we'll move on to an actual live test that we're going to be doing together. And I want you to actually pay very much attention. Take a notebook, take a pencil, and let's get started. Alright guys, let's now perform an actual TOEFL test. Remember, this is not a full-length test. I've created this test with my team with lesser amount of questions, but it captures the essence of the TOEFL. We'll have all 4 sections. Don't worry about it, guys. Alright, but make sure that you solve it with me. Let's begin. Alright, question 1 is going to be from the reading section, guys. Right, so I've started it. Guys, remember, on the actual TOEFL, you will not receive paragraph by paragraph passage. You will receive the whole passage. But for the purpose of this video, we've split it into paragraph by paragraph and we're solving questions alongside. Alright, so you'll see me do it. You'll see my thought process, and I want to show you exactly how to solve these questions. Let's begin. Alright, fracking in the environment. The 2010 documentary film, Gasland features a man in Colorado lighting the water from his home faucet on fire. Okay, so he lit the water on fire. Okay. The water is flammable because of methane, also known as natural gas, apparently released into the groundwater source from hydraulic fracturing in his area. Hydraulic fracturing. due to which methane was released in there. Okay, according to some researchers, this phenomenon has become common in several parts of the United States. Okay, now remember, questions are in order of the passage. So what did they mean by the water is flammable? Well, he lit the water on fire, they said. So the water is flammable, ignitable, right? It's gotta be potable. No, potable is something else. It's, I believe, drinkable. Incendiary is the word I'm looking for. I will choose that. And it's not poisonous, it's not incombustible. And we'll move forward. All right, I'm going to move forward here. The next one. What exactly is hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, and why has it become commonplace? Fracking is a drilling procedure designed to extract hard-to-reach resources from below the land surface. In particular, fracking has become the default procedure for unearthing natural gas deposits that are embedded in the openings within large shale rock formations. Okay, so some gas is stuck in between some shale rocks, and that's what they're getting out, unearthing, I believe, getting out, right? So extracting, yeah, that could be the answer, right? So I'll say extracting. That's what I'll write here. Cleansing, I don't think so. Identifying, planning, no, that's my answer. Maybe I can make this bigger so you guys can see better. All right, so that would be my answer, but now I will start reading further. This process is as follows. First, a traditional well similar to that used to reach petroleum is drilled into a specified depth. Okay, they go downwards. Then the well takes a 90-degree turn so that it's now running horizontal, parallel to the surface. Okay, so it's like this. Okay, and once the wellbore 1 has been drilled a sufficient distance, it is then flooded with liquid mixture called as fracking fluid. Okay, they put a fluid in there. Okay, this fluid is pumped into the wellbore at a tremendously high pressure, which causes the shale rock to split, freeing the natural gas and other resources trapped under the rock formation. Okay, these resources can then be much easily taken out from the ground. All right, so it splits them and resources can be taken out. Since the 1950s, over 1 million fracking procedures at roughly 100,000 fracking wells have been completed in the United States. So 1 million fracking procedures at 100,000 fracking wells. That means that in the same fracking well, there can be multiple procedures as well, if you think about it. Okay, paragraph 2 suggests which of the following about the fracking in the US. The United States is the first country to extract natural gas. No, it never said anything about that. More than one fracking procedure can be performed at a single well. Yep, that's the one I was talking about. So, probably 10 fracking procedures at, every location is being carried out. That on average, that's how it's reaching 1 million procedures at 100,000 locations. The process used in the United States is different from that. No, it never said anything about that. The process used in the United States has changed substantially. No, it never said anything about that. All right, so let's move forward with the B in this one. All right, guys. Next one. Natural gas has become an attractive fuel resource because it is abundant in Marcellus Shale Formation. I believe that's some stone found across much of Pennsylvania and Ohio and parts of neighboring states, as well as in several other formations in Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas. I don't care about the state names. Additionally, natural gas is considered a clean burning fuel because it releases much less carbon dioxide, nitric oxide, and sulfur oxide than other fuel sources, particularly coal, when it is burned. Okay, all right, sounds good. So natural gas is considered okay because it releases less of these gases than other fuels, particularly coal. Okay, fracking represents the most efficient and conventional method to access these fuel resources. All right. However, fracking creates numerous environmental problems by the very nature of the means used to extract the natural gas. Okay, I believe those would be in the next paragraph. According to paragraph 3, which is not a reason why fracking has become a common practice. Okay, it is highly efficient method. Okay, well, the natural gas extracted by fracking releases less in the way of pollutants than many other fuels do. Now, this is again a reason why it's common. Natural gas is found abundantly in many sites. This is also a reason. It has a few side effects that can affect the environment. I think this should be D, right? So according to paragraph 3, which is the following, is not a reason why fracking has become a common practice. All these reasons are why it's become a common practice, right? Has a few side effects that can affect the environment in a detrimental way. That's the only reason why it can get basically, out of common practice. All right, guys, the next one is again the same paragraph, I think. Yep, and they're asking another question here, and that is the word conventional in the passage is closest in meaning to conventional. Let's see, fracking represents the most efficient conventional method You can say, most efficient, easy method or simple method, right? It's almost a convention now, right? So established, pioneering, it's certainly not pioneering because that's new. Reliable could be, but I think it's more of an established, I would say, because it's a conventional method, right? It's almost a convention now. Experimental, no. I think I would go with A, established. All right, guys, let's move on with the next one. Let's forward it a little bit. Let's see here. Okay. First, fracking fluid itself is anything but safe. Okay, it primarily consists of water with a proprietary series of additives for various purposes needed for fracking process. Additives include hundreds of toxic substances such as solvents, surfactants, whatever, right? The exact mix used in any given operation can vary based on several factors, and companies are not required to legally publish an exact list of chemicals used. For any fracking operation, a substantial amount of this fluid must be employed. A fracking site will require 2 to 10 million gallons of fluid. This fluid must be brought to site by tanker trucks, which typically have a capacity of about 5,000 gallons only. That means there's many trucks. This is in addition to the equipment and pumping trucks that the site will require. Thus, thousands of tanker truck trips may be required to complete a given well. When the fluid is pumped into the ground, an attempt is made to contain and recover it, but some fracking fluid does seep into the rock sediment, and the seepage can contaminate nearby groundwater sources. Okay, so it can mess up the other water as well. Okay, it does not get recovered fully. The recovered fluid, known as wastewater, okay, must be contained above ground and disposed of properly. Okay, so it's not usable. This task is non-trivial. The word non-trivial is okay. So of course, if they're doing all of this, it's not easy. Non-trivial has to be not easy, right? So impractical. No, it's not. It's not impractical. It's done. Significant, I would say. Yeah, it's not easy. Negligible, costly are wrong. So B, significant, I would say. Right. Let's move on to the next one. All right. This task is non-trivial given the sheer volume of fluid required, and little government oversight is applied to ensure that fracking companies follow safe procedures. All right, sounds good. I understand it. According to paragraph 4, which of the following is true of the fluid used as a fracking operation? The precise mixture of chemicals are publicly known? No, they're not required to release it. That's what they said. Millions of gallons of fluid are typically used for a single fracking site. I believe that is correct. Millions of gallons of fluid are typically used. It says a fracking site will require 2 to 10 million. So I think it should be B, but let's see. Government oversight helps. No, they're not really having any oversight. That's what this passage is about. Most of the recovered fluid can be reused in other fracking operations. No, they said it's wastewater. It cannot be reused. So it's got to be B, guys. All right, let's move forward. All right. Wastewater is not only a potential source of environment complications from fracking. Not the only. Okay, it's not the only one. There's more. Okay. There is strong evidence to suggest that fracking can cause earthquakes. Research claims that more than half of the earthquakes in Texas in the last 40 years have been triggered by oil and gas drilling activity, with the preponderance coming from hydraulic fracturing. Now, that's why vocabulary is important. Preponderance means the majority, right? Even though they could have used a simpler word. So maximum comes from hydraulic fracking. The pace of growth in earthquakes is even more staggering in the recent years, as fracking has mushroomed in several parts of the United States. According to the United States Geological Survey, during the period 1973 to 2008, there were approximately 20 measurable earthquakes in central and eastern United States per year. In 2014, there were more than 600, and in 2015, over 1,000. While most of these earthquakes were minor and no structural damage happened to any buildings, their occurrence has become so popular, so common, that the phrase injection-induced seismicity has been coined to describe it. Seismic activity is again earthquakes. So, all right, its injection is basically fracking, I understand. According to paragraph 5, the concept of injection-induced seismicity is best described as earthquake activity in some locations caused by fracking operations. Yeah, that's what they mean by it, right? Earthquakes caused by fracking. Mechanisms by which earthquakes trigger hydraulic fracking? No, that does not happen. Increases in hydraulic fracking as a proportion of oil and gas drilling activity? No. The degree to which it makes earthquakes severe? No. That's all wrong, guys. Remember, guys, over here, per question, I've set 1 minute 40 seconds, but in general, you will have more time overall. So some questions we are also skipping some time, right? We're able to do them quickly. Some questions we're able to do, like it may take a little bit more time. So again, this distribution is not as perfect as on the TOEFL, but please understand that we're able to get to the answers in most cases before time. All right, let's move on. Okay, look at the part of the passage. Now we have to insert the sentence insertion. Remember? Okay, the sentence is, once completed, the fracking procedure can be performed again on the same well to extract resources not reached the first time. Okay, so this, of course, this cannot be done until the first time is finished, right? This is after the first time. So let's see. Fracking is a drilling procedure. Okay. The process is as follows. First, a traditional well similar to that used for petroleum is drilled into the depth. Then the well takes, you cannot add it till here because the first time has not happened. Let's go towards C. This fluid is pumped into the well bore at a tremendously high pressure. No, it's not done till now. These resources can be much more easily taken out from the ground. D. This is where the fracking has finished, because C also has, this fluid is pumped into the well bore at a tremendously high pressure. So they're still doing it for the first time. After that, once completed, the fracking procedure can be performed again, right? So this can be D right here, right? Okay, guys, let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is the final one, guys. You have to select the options which are going to have the summary, okay? Hydraulic fracturing is an important technique for extracting valuable resources, but its environmental consequences seem to be serious. This is a part of the summary. You have to select 3 more answer choices. Okay, so what's not that important? Fracking first emerged in the 1950s as a widely used natural gas extraction procedure. It's important, but it's not the most important thing. The fluid used in fracking is laden with toxic chemicals and is difficult to dispose of efficiently. Yes, that's quite important part of the passage. So I will say B should be there. Let's see. Fracking has become common because it efficiently extracts natural gas, a clean, burning, and abundant fuel. Yep, that is also a part of the summary. I would say it's important, right? The bore of a fracking well is first drilled vertically. See, that's too much detail. That's not exactly a part of the summary, right? It's really the nitbits that we don't really care about in the summary. How you do the fracking is not really what's important here. It's the effects of it, the impact of it, right? And that's what we're going to be looking at. An advantage of fracking is that relatively little investment is required. Again, it's one advantage of fracking, and secondly, it's wrong. There's quite a lot of investment required. Fracking has been associated with a rapid increase in the number of earthquakes. Yeah, that's quite important. That was a major part. So they said, first off, contamination and then earthquakes. These were the 2 major parts, and B is also important because, C is also important because, that's really why we are doing fracking, I think. Right? Okay, so BCF. Let's move on to the next question, guys. And right here, we start the listening section, so we start taking notes.
Now listen to a conversation between a student and professor.
Professor Johnson?
Hi, Katie. How are you doing?
Okay, I'm really excited about the project you assigned last week. I started doing research and really thinking about art and its impact on us. There's just so much to learn.
Great. I'm glad you think so. Have you settled on a topic for your project?
Yeah, I think so. So I was sitting in my best friend's dorm room, and she has these pictures by great artists. And I do too, but I was thinking about how different they were. Artists from a couple hundred years apart create images that are so different.
Right. That is often true.
So it got me thinking, how does one art form change into another? I mean, every artist is building from the work of the people who came before him, so there has to be a natural progression,
Absolutely. Many of the different periods overlap and grow from one another.
The only problem is, I really don't know where to start. I mean, there are so many different things that change, like the landscape and the subject matter and even the source of the paint.
Well, you're looking at a pretty extensive project. I mean, do you think that it's reasonable to study all?
I know, it's going to be so much. But I'm really interested in the links between different artistic periods. How do you go from Romanticism to Realism to Impressionism? What changed?
I agree that transition is very interesting. Have you thought about focusing on the transition from just one period to another?
Yeah, I started looking at Romanticism and Realism, but I'm interested in so much more. How can I get a big picture of the transitions in art while not being overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that I need to go through?
That question has been troubling art historians for years. I myself even started...
Right, it's so hard. I mean, I was really interested in the differences in the way artists show people's faces. You look at one face and it's completely different from how artists from a different period would have drawn it.
True, so maybe you could...
I guess it really is the images of the people I'm more interested in than anything else.
So maybe that's your topic. How have artists' representations of human faces changed over time?
Yeah, that makes sense. I can take maybe one or two artists from all the different periods and see how the facial features have changed. Or maybe even that's too much. What if I just take artists from the last 500 years? I should still be able to see a lot of the changes, but it won't be like way too much for me to handle.
That sounds like a much more manageable plan. Why don't you start research on the most recent artistic periods, analyze the work of a few artists, then come back and touch base with me in a week or two?
Now answer the question. 1. Why does the student go to see the professor?
Okay, for 1, my answer is that she is having trouble finding the motivation. No, she needs help understanding how her project will be assessed. No, she wants to ask for copies. She wants to ask for advice about how to do research for her project. Yep, that's the one. She's not really sure about how to do the research, right? And let's move forward from there. Let's see, right? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, guys, notes, very important.
2. Why is the student interested in the changes in artistic styles over time?
Okay, she's able to replicate artistic styles? No, she never said that. She thinks there are more similarities than differences between... No, she thinks there's quite a lot of differences, actually. She notices a difference between her best friend's art posters and her own. Yeah, I think that was there. I'm not quite sure if that's important. She's aware of the difficulties of differentiating art from different periods. She's aware of them, but that's not why she's interested in that. I think it's because she notices her friend's pictures. I also had this in the notes.
3. Based on the conversation, what could likely be concluded about two pieces of art from different periods? Select all that apply.
Okay, so they will show different artistic styles. They will be difficult to distinguish. No, they will not share the exact same paint sources. Yep, I think this is also C because, and also A because they will show different styles. They will not be studied by the same historians. That's not the case. See, paint one, I had it right here. And A is of course crew because they will have different artistic styles. So I believe these two should be the answer. Let's see.
4. What does the professor want the student to do next?
Well, he said start with the most recent ones. To read some journals, no, to meet with a group, to begin her research on the most... Yeah, that's the one. That's what he said. Start with this. Okay.
5. What can be inferred about the professor when he says this?
Well, you're looking at a pretty extensive project. I mean, do you think that it's reasonable to study all?
He thinks the topic is too specific. No, he thinks it should narrow her focus. Yes, that's what he does think, I think. He thinks the topic is not relevant to the course. He thinks the idea has been... No, that's it. Let's move forward. And I believe there should be maybe 5 only. Yep, there were only 5 questions because it's a conversation, right? So that's it. These are answers. All right, guys. This is also going to be a listening passage.
Now listen to a part of a lecture in an art history class.
We've been looking at some amazing structures that were built around the Mediterranean in ancient times, many, many years ago. The Parthenon in ancient Greece, the Sphinx and Great Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which was also in ancient Egypt. All of these structures were completed more than 2,000 years ago, while some other enormous and architecturally complex structures were also built in modern-day Mexico and Belize around this time, by the Aztec and Mayan civilizations. Today, we are focusing on the Mediterranean region. Now, I want you to shift your focus to the northwest of Athens in Egypt, to the ancient city of Rome. We are going to talk about the Colosseum, possibly the most famous ancient building in all of Europe. Much of the original structure remains today. It is truly a marvel, an amazing architectural feat, that such an enormous building could have been constructed 2,000 years ago, and mostly still be standing today. In fact, much more of it would still be standing if it weren't for damage that's been caused over the years by earthquakes and, believe it or not, theft. Thousands of original stones used in the construction of the Colosseum have been broken off and removed by thieves over the years. The Colosseum was originally named the Flavian Amphitheater. This is a reference to the Flavian dynasty, which consisted of Emperor Vespasian and his two sons, Titus and Domitian. They ruled the Roman Empire during the 10 years or so that it took to complete construction of the building. As you may know, it was built as an amphitheater, an open-air structure for hosting performances, for entertainment, for sports. And at the time, nothing like it existed anywhere else. It had a capacity of about 80,000 people, which rivals some of the biggest sports stadiums in the world today. And amazingly, the Colosseum is still the largest amphitheater that has ever been constructed. In fact, the name Colosseum, which was later given to the building, derives from the nearby colossal statue of the Roman Emperor Nero, who ruled the Roman Empire just before construction on the Colosseum commenced. Note that I said the word colossal. This word, as you know, means enormous, but it actually derives from another enormous structure built by the Greeks, the Colossus of Rhodes. Now, as for funding, well, it turns out most of the funding came from Vespasian, who used most of his bounty from the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD to pay for the amphitheater's construction. Titus, his son, was the victorious general in that conquest. On top of that, as many as 100,000 Jewish prisoners from the siege were brought over to Rome afterwards to build the Colosseum. Much of the travertine stone mined from the building came from about 30 kilometers away. So not only did the Jewish slaves have to build the Colosseum, these poor people had to carry the stones by hand for 30 kilometers to get them there. So why are we talking about the Colosseum in an art history class, rather than in an ancient architecture class? The reason is simple. Like so many buildings from ancient times, an enormous amount of design and effort went into making the structure itself a colossal work of art. The overall design mirrored the aesthetic of classical Greek architecture, with a continuous series of arches at each level. Each arch featured ornate columns, cast in the Greek Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian styles. It also featured something called a hypogeum, which is a complex underground structure. The origins of this word also are taken from the ancient Greeks, hypo meaning under, and gaios meaning the earth. This hypogeum consisted of a multi-level network of underground tunnels for the storage and transportation of animals, slaves, scenery, and props into the arena for the performances and games that took place there. And, as I mentioned before, some of the original structure of the Colosseum has been damaged, but its arches and hypogeum are quite well preserved today. So, if you ever get a chance to see it in person, perhaps with this little history lesson, you'll be better positioned to appreciate the tremendous architectural and artistic accomplishment that the Colosseum represents.
Now answer the question.
All right.
1. What does Professor mainly talk about?
Well, he talks about the Colosseum, design and creation of large structures in ancient Greece and Egypt, most famous buildings in modern day Europe now, Greek architecture, influences in building of the Colosseum, the construction and artistic and architectural features. I think it's D, because he's talking about the construction, artistic features, and architectural features, everything really, of the Colosseum. All right, so D. C.
2. What evidence does the professor give that supports the idea that the Colosseum is an amazing architectural accomplishment?
Well, he says it's 2,000 years old. That's one. 10 years to build, I wouldn't say that. I mean, something can take 10 years to build, but it doesn't make it amazing. It was funded by the spoils. No, it features a hypogeum, maybe, but I think it's mostly A in this case, simply because he said we're studying it because it's still standing today, 2,000 years old building, enormous, right? All right.
3. According to the professor, what was one result from the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD?
Okay, what was one result? Well, prisoners were taken to construct the Colosseum. Yep, that should be it. Vespasian became, no. The architects of Colosseum decided to use columns. No. The Romans constructed a statue of Emperor Nero. No, it was this. After the war, they took the people as prisoners. The Jews were used to construct it.
Sir, why did the Colosseum feature a hypogeum?
Okay. To provide temporary housing for the slaves? No. To commemorate emperors of the Flavian dynasty? No. To store and convey people and objects? Yes, people and props, we wrote, right? So this has got to be C. All right. Now this is a lecture, so there will be 6 questions. Let's see the next one.
5. Why does the professor discuss the Colosseum in an art history class?
Okay, he's attempted to contrast the Colosseum with other ancient buildings. Not really. He believes that the Colosseum represents an enormous work of art. Yes, I think that is the answer. He wants to discuss various pieces of art that have been displayed there. No, he believes that any building that includes ancient Greek architecture elements is a work. They've never mentioned anything about that, so it's got to be B, guys. All right?
What does the professor imply about the naming of the Colosseum?
In fact, the name Colosseum, which was later given to the building, derives from the nearby colossal statue of the Roman Emperor Nero, who ruled the Roman Empire just before construction on the Colosseum commenced. Note that I said the word colossal. This word, as you know, means enormous, but it actually derives from another enormous structure built by the Greeks, the Colossus of Rhodes.
Okay. Emperor Nero requested that the name of the building, nothing was mentioned. It inspires. So what does he imply about naming? Okay. It inspired that the naming of the statue of Emperor Nero. No, it was already there beforehand, I think. It derives indirectly from the name of an ancient Greek statue. I believe that's what he is trying to say. Yes, it derives indirectly from the name of an ancient Greek statue. It was renamed when the Flavian dynasty came into power. No. Alright guys, now we have the speaking question, so I will bring this chart here.
You will now read a short passage and listen to a conversation on the same topic. You will then be asked a question about them. After you hear the question, give yourself 30 seconds to prepare your response. Then, record yourself speaking for 60 seconds. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now.
Housing for first-year students. Starting next year, entering first-year students will no longer have the option of living off campus. Okay, so students cannot live off campus, and this is for first-year students. The new policy is supported by research suggesting that students who live on campus during their exam, during their first year, earn higher grades and have fewer high grades, less issues disciplinary. Since over 90% of the first year students already choose to live in campus housing each year, the new policy will only affect a small number of incoming students. Okay, so over 90% already live on campus.
Now listen to a conversation about the same topic.
Why do they care whether people live off campus during their first year?
Did you read the article about it? Supposedly, people who live on campus get better grades.
Sure, maybe a few people live off campus so that they can party and get into trouble. But on the other hand, a lot of people find it easier to study when they're not in a dorm.
That's true. The dorm I was in my first year, my roommate listened to the worst music. I could never concentrate there.
Yeah, so if you make somebody live in a dorm, maybe it'll help them, or maybe it'll end up actually hurting their grades.
I would have gotten better grades if I lived off campus.
Plus, I think a lot of people live off campus for good reasons. What if somebody has to take care of their grandparents or their siblings?
Right. They can't do anything about that. If they can't live off campus, they might not be able to go to school at all.
And staying in the dorms is so expensive. It's not fair to make people pay that much. If they could find an apartment down the road that costs half of what the dorms do.
Now answer the question. The man expresses his opinion of the campus housing policy. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. You have 30 seconds to prepare your response. You may begin preparing now.
Guys, so the change was that students cannot live off campus. So I'll start like this, okay? The change in the reading mentioned that, or you can say the reading mentioned that first year students can no longer stay on campus. The man was against this change, and he gives 3 reasons, I'll say.
You now have 60 seconds to speak. You may begin speaking now.
The reading mentioned that first-year students can no longer stay on campus. However, the man had a different opinion. He gave 3 reasons as to why living on campus may not be the best idea and this change should not be mandated. The first reason was that it may actually be easier to study off campus simply because sometimes roommates in dorms can be very distracting. The reason number 2 he gives is that many students have to take care of their dependents, for instance, their grandmother or their sibling who may need them. And that's not possible on an on-campus dorm. And the final reason that he gives is that these dorms can often be expensive. So living on campus can really be quite heavy on the pocket of students, whereas sometimes off-campus housing, which may be cheaper, may make it easier. That's why he opposes the changes on campus. That's it. All right, guys. Final question, and that is writing. And we chose question type 2 over here. As you can see, question type 2, the latest question. One of these I'm going to be solving with you. 10 more questions on the website on YMGrad.com. Right, guys? So let's begin. You will see me write, you will see me read, and I'm doing this with you. Okay. So we have 10 minutes, right? So, okay, we have to, really, it's like a blog. The professor introduced an idea. I have to write at least 100 words, okay? So I like to make some notes before I write. Let's see. Today we're exploring the contrast between promoting global connectivity through social media and safeguarding mental well-being by limiting screen time. Okay, so social media connects people worldwide, facilitating communication, but excessive screen time can contribute to mental health challenges. Okay, if you were compelled to prioritize either global social media connectivity or mental well-being through screen time reduction, which option would you select? Select the rationale of your choice. Okay, so we already have 2 comments from some of my friends over here. Alex says, promoting global social media connectivity offers unparalleled opportunities for cross-cultural exchange and communication. Social media has revolutionized activism and information dissemination. While screen time can impact mental health, responsible usage guidelines can mitigate negative effects without sacrificing the benefits of connectivity. Kimberly says, safeguarding mental well-being should take precedence over excessive screen time. Social media often promotes unrealistic standards and contributes to anxiety and depression. Prioritizing mental health through screen time reduction encourages more meaningful interactions and healthier lifestyles without completely isolating individuals from global connectivity. Okay, so my comment is going to be somewhere like this. Okay, I will speak for the motion. So, my comment is that global connectivity through social media, right? Global connectivity through social media is going to be more important to me, right? Should be prioritized. And then before that, I will give you reasons, right? Guys, remember to use a notepad that does not correct your spelling mistakes. Even though the mistake I did not made over here was not really a mistake. Can be Z, can be S, both are correct. But it's trying to correct me and I don't want you to use this notepad. Anyway, okay, my reasons will be why it should be prioritized is, we're moving towards helps advancement of the human race, right? Helps produce, research faster. Yeah, research outcomes faster, right? And it helps with, let's see, maybe that should be it. But I will concede in the end, and when I concede, I will say some individuals may need restricting, right? Restricting, right? Something like that. So that's my plot over here, okay? Should be prioritized over, or I can start like this. In my opinion, global connectivity through social media should be prioritized over screen time reduction on the large scale. Social media connectivity has helped us advance or you can say, social media connectivity, right? Social media is social media induced ease of connectivity has supported or has created avenues for the advancement of human race quicker than, or you can say faster than ever, right? Okay. It helps produce research outcomes quicker. It helps the world collaborate and produce research outcomes quicker, through which the world is advancing at a speed like never before. I understand that certain individuals may not have the self-control to limit their screen time, which may have detrimental effects on them. For such cases, social media applications should allow the possibility of restricting their screen time to a specific amount of hours per day. This would help us continue to develop at an ever, or you can say continue to develop, continue to advance while prioritizing mental health for people who need control or who need limiting, right? So this is my answer. You saw how I wrote it. Now I'm just going to read through it, right? In my opinion, global connectivity with social media should prioritize over screen time reduction on the large scale. Social media induced ease of connectivity has created avenues for the advancement of human race faster than ever. It helps reduce the world. Oh, see, this is wrong. It helps the world collaborate and produce research outcomes quicker, through which the world is advancing at a speed like never before. I understand that certain individuals may not have the self-control to limit their screen time, which may have detrimental effects on them. Okay. For such cases, social media applications should allow the possibility of restricting their screen time to a specific amount of hours per day. This would help us continue to advance while prioritizing mental health for people who need limiting. That would be my final answer, guys. And you saw how important the review process is right here. So guys, this was the TOEFL test that I promised to take in front of you. I hope that your answers were somewhat close to mine, because all of my answers over here have been correct. I can assure you of that. And in terms of the questions, if you need more help, my number is always in the description. And in terms of if you need more questions, right, you don't have enough questions, go ahead, sign up on YMGrad.com. We'll send you a lot of free material your way after you've done signing up. Thank you so much for watching this, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you like this video. Follow us on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye and take care until next time.